Hello again, and welcome to part 2. If you suffered all the way through part 1 and that wasn't enough suffering for you, I've got a few more bits and bobs to show you, so here we are. There's a couple of things I should have mentioned really in the first part. Primarily, firstly, that building bricks blocks, you're using slabs, vertical slabs, whatever, the slab rules still apply. So obviously that can dictate your spacing somewhat when you're using the block variants and fractional derivatives, as I call them, from building bricks. You still have the collision block area of a full block as per your normal Minecraft slabs, so it can, there's a little bit of getting used to that with spacing things, and it can provide a sort of, can provide a sort of limitation to some certain degree when with what you can create. But obviously if you get the mod, you'll find out what's possible and what's not. But this obviously works out to a certain degree. I've configured it so it should work okay, as you can see, before your very eyeballs. The other thing, and perhaps a bit more important, is spacing. Obviously there's this setup here, and you can see the way I've worked this corner is this corbel that's projecting on this face essentially sits flush with this corresponding face at right angles going out in this direction. And if we travel to the other end, we can see, using this particular spacing, obviously that's not going to work. When we get to this corner, there's no room for a corbel there, and I don't think as such you'd be able to place one there with the slab rules applying, as I've said. Thereby, with the building bricks, for instance, the building bricks mod, it is quite important, as silly as it sounds, to lay out your buildings according to the spacing of the parapet. It's only generally a 1 or 2 block difference, so I mean, if you bear that in mind before you get too high up, and you sort of get to a certain level, once you've laid out the foundations, just pop a few corbels on and just get a feel for how the parapet's going to turn out, so you don't end up with this sort of effect where you either have to add 2 slabs or take a slab, add 2 slabs, add blocks or remove blocks, the wall thickness and the general building size. I'll show you. If I just add the 1, obviously it would be able to place a corbel there, like so, with this slab, but that would be in this position according to this space layout, and it still wouldn't sit flush with the corner. So to be able to get the correct spacing and lay things out correctly, I'll just show you. Just take the illustration a little further. Like I mentioned in the previous video, let go of everything, make sure you click a few times to select the right block when floating with that GUI. It's a nice illustrative example of how not to do it. Anyway, there we go. According to this spacing, and dictated by the slab rules and collision blocks, etc., then you'd need 2 extra blocks on this building to make the parapet work and get this corbel flush with the wall face that would travel in this direction. I can use 2 slabs together to make 1 block if I, whoops, nope, just to sort of take that wall out and make you just illustrate the point a little further still. Okay, so the building would, you can imagine this wall travelling down, the building would be of that size, and it does sound silly laying out an entire building according to how you're spacing your parapet, but it can be a big help, especially if you've got multiple different parts of buildings and towers and turrets all sort of juxtaposed and conjoined with one another, and then you find that the parapet spacing doesn't work out. It can be very difficult if you need to add 2 blocks extra or reduce blocks or whatever it might be to a building that's part of a composite with many other parts of building, the same building sort of all coming together. That's what I mean. Yeah, you understand. It can be a bit of a blow if you created something you're very proud of, you're hoping to cap it off with some matriculated crown, and then you find that you forgot to get your spacing right. It's a pain in the backside. So worth considering when you're using the building bricks. But as I said before, there's a bit of a step on. I recently got chisels and bits, and some of those, the spacing rules, for instance, with building bricks, tend to apply somewhat less when you're using chisels and bits, if I can say it correctly. But yeah, when you use the chisels and bits mod, that has MC multi-part capability, which is essentially the capability of being able to place multiple blocks within the space of one block. So we've got this sort of the micro block thing that you might have seen with chisels and bits, but it also works for larger pieces as well. Although it might not appear to be the case, what I've actually done here is I've replicated the parapet from the previous video using chisels and bits blocks, essentially just pieces that I've cut from a full-size block, and I've just saved. You can just see on the far right, the bottom line, chisels and bits, chiseled rock there. So you might wonder why. Well, that was a good thing. Yeah, F3, useful, well done. Rocking the pro skills again. Anyway, you might wonder why I've just replicated the same thing using chisels and bits blocks, and what the difference might be in doing so. But it's, as I said, it's owing to this MC multi-part capability, and obviously you've got chisels and bits blocks which can be placed within the same collision box spacing, and across collision box spacings for your vanilla block placement. And obviously if you're using something like building bricks that doesn't have the MC multi-part capability, sometimes you'll find yourself, even if you're using a chisels and bits made block, it won't obviously place with a block that doesn't have the multi-part ability tied into it. So that's kind of why I've just replicated this parapet almost in its entirety, just to allow placement of blocks and to illustrate a little further how I've used chisels and bits to refine this style of parapet just a little bit further. You can see in my hotbar I've got various pieces that I've lopped out of a full-size block with chisels and bits, and it saves them very helpfully to this. You can see this clipboard here, so anything you've chiseled ends up in this clipboard, and you can just grab it out of there and pop it in your inventory, and save it in a chest or whatever it might be. Something that I find highly useful. So just grab this fellow while I'm here, because I might actually save that for later. Anyway, sorry. Here we are anyway. So what I'm going to do now is show you some of these further refinements that I've got using chisels and bits, as opposed to simply the building bricks mod. So I'll just add some bits in. You can see this fantastic block placement thing. You get a sort of generic placement like so, and then if you hold shift, obviously as soon as I'm floating I'll hold space and shift, you can get a much more versatile set of options, should I say, for placing your block. I'm not very good at this narration thing, I'm sorry. But for instance, that one there is a good illustration of MC multiply. You can just see the line between two blocks, and I've just placed that block in between two blocks, across the gap between two collision boxes. So it just shows you how much more versatile you can be with an MC multi-part capable mod. So I'll place these fellas in anyway. Now hopefully all my waffling isn't completely indecipherable. So what I'm doing is building down the parapet, and see so it sits below the level of the wall walk, and it has immediate apparent effect and useful sort of visual effect of, meaning you don't get all those sort of gaps with the sky. So from a distance the whole thing looks a little bit more solid, which is I think helps a great deal visually with this configuration of parapet. Okay, so there we are. Now, to a certain degree, it's sort of improved the corbels, but I think that they can do with a bit more improvement. So I'll just step on in and use, where are we? We'll go with number 5, and I know it's a little bit dark, so I do apologise. It's probably not going to be standing me in good stead when it comes to placing these, but I'll build this out. I'll just use this little section, and you might say, excuse me, you can see these sort of lines on the stones and such, and you might argue that they don't look particularly realistic, or it wouldn't be a realistic configuration for the stonework. And I guess you'd be right, but I think as a whole, from the distance, you tend to overlook such things and just see the general effect. Obviously from this close-up, it's quite apparent, but from a distance it's not so readily apparent. I might just misplace that. No, it's not too bad. Apologies for this. I'll just get this done. I should do a cut and come back, with it all finished, but you sort of get a bit of a shooting star's very nice. I love you, Conquest. You're the best flipping mod. Sorry, just a bit of a fanboy for the. Oh, definitely misplaced that. Yep. Useful thing, chisels and bits. I'll just nip onto the chisel itself. Oh look, undo. Get out of here, as a certain Mr. TDM might say. Right, okay. Let's pop back to that. Where are we? Number 5. Oh, there we are. You can just use that generic placement there. It's very helpful. Yeah, sorry about this, folks. But we'll step back. Just do these 4, and we'll step back and have a little look at the overall effect in a moment. My apologies, by the way, if you're getting any sort of lag rendered into this video. I've tried to up the quality a little bit, so it's not so much like having pixels thrown in your eyes, because the previous videos I've made were very much like that. It's pushing my little laptop a bit, but it's just an attempt to make things a little more pleasant visually, so you might end up getting a bit of lag. So I'll tell you what, we'll just go back to daytime. Very bad at typing. I'm certainly no pro. My daughter can out-type me by about 1,000 words a second. Anyway, there we are. This is the chisels and bits kind of variation on that previous building bricks parapet. And like I said, it helps to sort of get rid of most of the building bricks things and vertical slabs and the like, because it becomes a lot easier when you're using blocks that all have the MC multi-part capability. So very helpful, but I think it gives a greater effect of solidity. You can't just see the sky through the matriculation slots. You can't see the sky as readily, and that aids the look and gives a more powerful and muscular presence to your fortification. And I think the triple corbels are a little bit more refined as well. So that's my reasoning behind those additions there. You're not losing anything in terms of the field of fire and that defensive capability there. I wonder how many times I've said capability and functionality. I tend to just stick to the same words and phrases, so I do apologise. I'm not a very good presenter of these things, but it's more about kind of the results of the building rather than my lack of skills in presenting them. So yeah, that's pretty much that in terms of the parapet itself from the exterior. But there's one or two things I've just been playing with on the interior, and first things first, I'm not too sure on this, but I'll just have a little look. I've got the chisel equipped here, and if I just 1, 2, 3, 4, I just chisel these away. You see, There's a building bricks block still hiding in there that I hadn't placed. Alright, I hadn't replaced, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Now we'll just get rid of these fellas. Just chisel them away. We're just using the connected plane variant of the chisel interface. There's various, I've not even tried these ones out yet. I'm not quite sure how to use them. But anywho, so we'll open this shutter. And again, it makes it look a little bit weedy from upon the parapet walk. So I'm not too sure if I'm going to go with this. But you can obviously see it increases the field of fire even further, which is certainly an advantage for the functional element. I'm just not too sure about the aesthetic of having this thinner section. I certainly wouldn't want to take the Merlons any further down. So, but I'm a little torn. I've been replacing a few things up on the castle there with this particular configuration, and I think for that even more even greater field of fire, I think I'm almost a convert. I might end up doing that. You'll have to excuse me a moment, I just need a drink. My apologies. So anyway, yeah, I think I'm almost a convert for this extra thinning out of the sections of parapet below the crenels. I'll close these up. And one more thing, some folk might not be so keen on the way these shutters appear to be floating almost, so that's something else that I've sort of thought of a little answer for. You have to forgive me using purple. Excuse me. I do actually, I'll just press Alt and we want drawn region. I've been using purple because though having the flat colour blocks mod, it goes hand in hand with chisels and bits. I haven't quite found, well, I've just not quite got my head around using it yet, so I find that using purple it ends up that you have something that looks rather more metallic than using a chisel variant of say the iron block or something like that. So I think there we are. It looks reasonably metallic from a distance, and you can see now it might not pivot exactly around the correct point, but it's just something visually to make it look as if the shutter is actually attached to something. So there we are, just pop one in there, and it's just another addition, sorry, to just beef up the realism slightly, if not be completely realistic. It is, after all, Minecraft, so I've got to bear with me there. Anyway, we'll just finish things, and there we are. So we've got little hinges or hangers for the shutters now, and I think, in general terms, it's a worthy refinement. It's worth getting chisels and bits for many different reasons, but I think it works quite well on these. And there's a few other things you can do. I'll tell you what, rather than building stuff, I'll just take a quick fly up to the castle and show you some of these other variations you could maybe carry out. Here we are, roofed parapets, for instance. I've used architecture craft blocks for this one, but you could still use vanilla blocks, and they'd just be just as serviceable and provide the same effect. They're essentially doing the same job. They'll have a wander inside. And you can see it'll be fairly safe from the attacks of foes. So that's something you might consider doing, roofing in your parapets. And as I've said previous, you can use your step blocks to do that, rather than having something like architecture craft. But I'm quite keen on architecture craft as a whole. I think it's a great mod, so that's why I've gone with that. Falling. I think pretty much that is about it. I think there's a few other things, perhaps, but it's should really leave it up to you guys if you want to get work with this. For Conquest Reforged, been adding some vertical slabs in. Again, slab rules probably apply with those there, so something to consider. They don't have a stone brick variant as of the time of recording this, but they also have some of these corner blocks. Although again, this is one that I chiseled using chisels and bits, but it provides an alternative perhaps if you wanted to make a different style corner. I'm not convinced on it myself just yet, but I've used them in some places. But they just some more options, I guess, for various configurations you could use. I've got my mouse hooked up here, which if I hold down Shift and space, obviously being floating, silly fool. Yeah, you can use your mouse wheel when you're in this kind of ghost block interface thing, and it's very helpful. If you hold Shift and then use the jog wheel, you can rotate your block as well, something I negated to mention earlier. Anyway, I'll just see if I can come up with a different configuration. It's being a bit awkward right now. Probably, just straight away. Oh, there we are. It's just one of the default interfaces, or default placements. So you could go something like this instead. Not quite as heavy, doesn't project out quite as far. So there's yet another variant. So that's it. There's multiple different things you can do, and chisels and bits is invaluable for just making those little bespoke blocks to help with those configurations. I mean, you can just perhaps, just another idea off the top of my head, you could do an overhanging Baratis, just have a flush parapet for instance, and then just have one overhanging matriculated stone box for instance, something like that. Not that I'm doing a very good job of building one right now, but yeah, you know, there's a lot of different ideas you could come up with just to expand upon this particular form of parapet. Anyway, I'll stop waffling at you. It's just something to consider, and certainly an argument for getting a few mods in. For those who are bemoaning the loss of the metadatas, there's a lot of folks like Conquest Reforged who are updating their post 1.8 variants of their mods and resource packs, and just adding in all the metadata blocks that they've created for the pre 1.8 versions of their mods. So there's a lot of people working around that, and I think it's great to see how people are getting around that particular issue, and couple something like Conquest Reforged with some of these additional mods, and you've got a huge amount of versatility. So I hope people don't keep giving up on the game if they enjoy creating, because there's a lot of folk working very busy, working hard to get that creative element back and up and running. So it's worth keeping your eyes open, keeping your hand in. That's all I can say. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now, and I wish you all the very, very best once again, and well, maybe another video at some point. So take care.